2 minutes left changes how the truth sounds. Suddenly the noise drops, the jokes die, the excuses lose their grip. When time shrinks, honesty gets loud. You stop pretending you're confused and start remembering what you avoided. Every distraction you hid behind steps aside, and what's left is the version of you that knew better but waited. Any urgency doesn't knock, it kicks the door in. It doesn't ask how you feel about it or whether you're ready. It collapses the stage lights, rips down the backdrop, and shows you the wires, the cracks, the cheap paint you thought was marble. Illusion survives on time. Give people enough time and they'll decorate their lies, rehearse their excuses, polish their masks until they believe them. Take the time away and everything artificial starts shaking. When the clock tightens, stories fall apart. The ones you told others, the ones you told yourself. All the someday language turns into noise because urgency doesn't understand promises, it understands action. It exposes how much of your life was performance and how little of it was commitment. The plans that mattered rise to the surface. The distractions you swore were important suddenly look ridiculous. Urgency is ruthless like that. It doesn't argue. It reveals illusion needs comfort to survive. It needs space, routine, predictability. Urgency removes all three. When there's pressure, you stop pretending you're confused. Confusion is a luxury. Under urgency, you remember exactly what you avoided. You remember the decisions you postponed, the conversations you dodged, the risks you explained away with logic that sounded smart at the time. The truth doesn't become clearer because you're wiser. It becomes clearer because there's no room left to lie. People love to believe they're complex, misunderstood, still figuring things out. Urgency laughs at that. It simplifies everything. It turns life into a short list of what you did and what you didn't, what you chose and what you hid from. When urgency shows up, your identity stops being what you claim and starts being what you practiced. That's why it feels violent. Not because it hurts you, but because it takes away your ability to negotiate with reality. Illusions also depend on an audience. They need validation, agreement, silence. Urgency isolates you. It puts you alone with your choices. No applause, no explanations, no social buffering. Just you and the consequences of how you spend your time. In that space, excuses sound hollow. Blame loses its flavor. You can't distract yourself with opinions or comparisons because urgency doesn't care who else is watching. It cares what you're doing right now. Under urgency, priorities don't get discussed. They get exposed. You see what you protected and what you sacrificed. You see where your energy actually went, not where you said it went. People are shocked by this moment because they assumed their intentions counted. Urgency doesn't count intentions. It counts movement. It counts consistency. It counts follow-through. Everything else is background noise. Illusion also thrives on the belief that there will always be more time to fix things. Urgency destroys that belief instantly. It doesn't threaten you with the future. It corners you in the present, and in that corner, you find out whether you've been building something solid or stacking excuses. You find out if your confidence was earned or borrowed. You find out if your morals were situational or lived. This is why urgency terrifies people more than failure. Failure can be explained. Failure can be blamed on circumstances. Urgency offers no such comfort. It doesn't tell you what will happen, it shows you who you are. It removes the padding between you and the truth. No filters, no edits. Just raw exposure. Illusions make life feel manageable. Urgency makes life feel real. Under pressure, you stop caring about looking good and start caring about what matters. You stop protecting appearances and start protecting outcomes. That shift is irreversible. Once you've seen yourself without illusion, you can't unsee it. You can pretend again, but it never works the same. The cracks stay visible. Urgency doesn't create character, it reveals it. It doesn't make you brave or cowardly, it shows which one you practiced. It doesn't make you honest or deceptive, it shows which one was convenient. And that's the part people hate the most. Not the pressure, not the fear, but the clarity. Because clarity removes excuses permanently. When time compresses, truth expands. The room gets smaller, the noise fades, and all that's left is the weight of your choices standing right in front of you. No metaphors, no motivation posters, no comforting lies, just the undeniable outline of who you became when you thought no one was counting, when you thought you had plenty of time, when you believed the illusion would hold a little longer. Limited time doesn't persuade you to be honest, it traps you into it. It corners you where pretending becomes inefficient. Lies need space. They need long explanations, backup stories, emotional cushioning. Honesty is fast, it's sharp, it fits inside seconds. When time runs out, honesty is the only thing that can still move without tripping over itself. When you think you have plenty of time, you negotiate with truth, you delay it, soften it, redesign it so it doesn't hurt your image. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later. When things calm down, when you're stronger, when circumstances change, limited time burns those delays to the ground. Suddenly there's no later to hide behind. The truth stops asking and starts staring. People don't lie because they're evil. They lie because honesty feels expensive. It costs comfort, approval, control. Time makes that cost feel manageable. Limited time flips the equation. Now dishonesty becomes expensive. It takes too much effort to maintain, too much energy to perform, too much thinking to keep track of contradictions. Under pressure, the brain stops decorating reality and starts reporting it. That's why panic and honesty often arrive together, not because fear makes you brave, but because fear removes the luxury of pretense. You stop explaining and start admitting. You stop defending and start acknowledging. You don't have time to protect your ego, so you protect what actually matters. Limited time forces alignment between thought, feeling, and action because there's no bandwidth left for fragmentation. When time is abundant, people speak in theories. When time is scarce, they speak in facts. The language changes. Less I think, more I did. Less maybe, more this is. Limited time strips the fluff out of communication. It removes the poetic excuses and leaves behind blunt reality. That bluntness feels cruel to people who survived on ambiguity. Honesty under limited time is uncomfortable because it exposes priorities. You see what you're willing to say when there's no reward attached. You see who you reach for first, what you protect instinctively, what you're willing to let go without a fight. That information is usually buried under routines and distractions. Limited time drags it into the open. People also discover how dishonest they've been with themselves. That's the hardest part. You can lie to others for years, but under pressure, self-deception collapses instantly. You remember what you knew all along. You remember the red flags you renamed hope, the habits you called coping, the stagnation you labeled patience. Limited time doesn't introduce new truths. It removes the cover from old ones. There's a reason people fear deadlines more than consequences. Deadlines don't hurt you, they expose you. They reveal whether your words were placeholders or promises, whether your intentions had weight or were just emotional decoration. When time runs out, you don't get to argue about who you meant to be, only who you practiced being. Limited time also destroys fake confidence. Confidence built on reassurance collapses under pressure. Confidence built on reality sharpens. You stop posturing. You stop seeking approval. You don't have time to look impressive. You need to be accurate. Honest confidence is quieter, more focused, less theatrical. It's not trying to win. It's trying to survive with integrity intact. People romanticize honesty like it's a moral achievement. Under limited time, it's more like a reflex. You don't choose it, it chooses you. There's no energy left to maintain lies, so truth spills out. Not dramatically, not heroically, but efficiently. Clean sentences, clear admissions, direct decision, the kind of honesty that doesn't sound brave, just necessary. That's why limited time changes relationships instantly. Masks slip, roles dissolve, performances end. Some connections strengthen because they were already built on truth. Others collapse because they were propped up by convenience and avoidance. Limited time doesn't ruin relationships. It audits them. Honesty under pressure isn't gentle. It doesn't reassure. It doesn't soften itself to protect feelings. It prioritizes clarity over comfort. People resent it because they confuse comfort with safety. Limited time proves that clarity is safer than illusion, even if it hurts more in the moment. When the clock tightens, you don't rise to your ideals, you fall to your habits. And those habits speak honestly for you. They show where your loyalty really is, what you value without negotiation, what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. Limited time doesn't ask you to explain yourself. It listens to what you do when explanations no longer fit, that's why. Honesty under limited time feels brutal and freeing at the same time. Brutal, because it removes every lie you were leaning on. Freeing, because once truth is out, there's nothing left to manage, nothing left to maintain, nothing left to pretend. Just reality, raw and exposed, moving faster than fear, can keep up distraction. Don't die quietly, they implode. Under pressure, they don't politely step aside. They get exposed as what they always were, tools to delay responsibility. When time stretches, distractions feel harmless, even helpful. They give you something to touch while avoiding what needs to be faced. But squeeze the clock, compress the moment, and those same distractions start choking you. They demand attention you no longer have. They beg for energy you can't afford to give. Pressure has a way of turning background noise into dead weight. Every unnecessary habit, every pointless argument, every routine you maintained out of comfort suddenly feels heavy. You don't have the luxury of scattering your focus anymore. When pressure arrives, it doesn't ask what you enjoy, it asks what matters. And distractions don't survive that interrogation. People think distraction. Our external phones noise other people, but the real ones live inside. Overthinking, replaying conversation, imagining outcomes that don't exist yet. Under pressure, those internal distractions collapse first. There's no time to spiral, no space to fantasize. The mind shifts from wandering to targeting. It becomes brutally efficient. Anything that doesn't serve survival, clarity, or action gets discarded without apology. Distractions rely on abundance. Abundant time, abundant energy, abundant excuses. Pressure removes abundance. It introduces scarcity, and scarcity sharpens focus like a blade. Suddenly, you notice how much of your life was spent maintaining distractions instead of direction. How many hours were sacrificed to staying comfortable instead of becoming precise. Under pressure, you don't multitask, you prioritize. The collapse is violent because distractions pretend to be necessary. They disguise themselves as obligations, entertainment, connection, self-care. Pressure strips the costume off. You realize how many things you were doing just to avoid stillness, how often you filled silence so you wouldn't have to. Listen, pressure doesn't allow that escape. It forces you into the moment whether you like it or not. When distractions collapse, clarity rushes in, and clarity is unsettling. You see the problem without filters. You see the decision without delay. You see the consequence without cushioning. That clarity feels harsh because it removes the buffer between you and responsibility. You can't hide behind busyness anymore. You can't pretend you didn't notice. The collapse of distraction leaves you exposed. Pressure also reveals how addicted people are to being distracted. When distractions fail, panic sets in. Hands reach for familiar escapes that no longer work. Scrolling feels empty. Talking feels unnecessary. Noise feels irritating. That discomfort is the withdrawal phase. It's the mind realizing it has to operate without anesthesia. And in that raw state, reality comes into focus. Distractions collapse because they were never built to withstand urgency. They're designed for delay, not decision. Under pressure, the brain demands alignment. Every action has to connect to an outcome. Every thought has to justify its presence. Distractions can't do that. They evaporate when questioned directly. Why are you here? What are you protecting? What are you costing? People who panic under pressure aren't weak, they're distracted. They trained themselves to cope through avoidance instead of engagement. When pressure removes the escape routes, they feel naked. People who stay steady under pressure aren't fearless, they're practiced. They learned to live without distractions long before urgency arrived. They already knew how to sit with discomfort, how to focus without stimulation, how to act without noise. The collapse of distractions also exposes false urgency. The things you thought were emergencies suddenly feel irrelevant. The arguments that consumed your energy look small. The opinions that controlled your mood lose their grip. Pressure reorganizes your internal hierarchy. It shows you what actually moves the needle and what was just keeping you occupied. When distractions fall away, time feels different. Seconds feel heavier. Choices feel sharper. You stop drifting between options and start committing. That commitment scares people because it removes deniability. You can no longer say you were unsure. You were clear. You just had to act. Pressure doesn't eliminate distractions to punish you. It eliminates them to prepare you. It clears the field so only essential movement remains. In that stripped-down state, you're closer to yourself than you've been in years. No noise, no clutter. No performance, just intention meeting reality. Distractions collapsing under pressure isn't a loss, it's a revelation. It shows you how much focus you actually have when nothing is allowed to waste it. It proves that clarity was always available, just buried under comfort. And once you've experienced that level of focus, distractions never feel harmless again. They feel expensive, heavy, unnecessary, like noise trying to drown out a truth that already learned how to survive without the final moments. Don't invent priorities, they uncover them. They peel back the layers of planning, pretending, and postponing and leave only instinct standing. When time stops being generous, the mind stops negotiating. There's no debate, no weighing options, no rehearsing explanation. What you reach for first is what mattered all along, not what you claimed mattered when there was time to decorate. The story people think priorities are chosen calmly, thoughtfully, with lists and goals and speeches. That's a lie people tell themselves when there's room to rearrange the furniture. Real priorities live deeper than intention. They live in reflex. In crisis, in pressure, in final moments, you don't consult values, you expose them. You move toward what you protected consistently, what you fed with attention, what you practiced caring about when nobody forced you to decide. That's why final moments feel cruel. They don't respect your self-image. They don't care how reasonable your excuses sounded last year. They don't ask who you meant to become. They look at what you repeated, what you avoided, what you kept close when everything else could wait. The truth comes out without permission. And it's efficient, almost cold when the clock tightens. Distractions lose their charm. The things you swore were important suddenly feel hollow. Notifications, opinions, status, all of it fades when there's no future left to impress. What remains are people, unfinished business, unresolved courage. and the quiet awareness of where your energy actually went. Final moments don't ask what you believed in, they ask what you invested in. People are shocked by their own reactions in those moments, not because they're different than expected, but because they were honest. You see who you try to call, who you think about, what you regret not saying, what you regret saying too often. You notice which fears suddenly seem small and which ones were running your life without being invited. Final moments are audits, not speeches. Priorities revealed under pressure don't care about morality narratives. They don't line up neatly with what sounds good in conversation. They show attachment, avoidance, loyalty, fear, love, and ego in raw form. That rawness is unsettling because it doesn't flatter you. It doesn't insult you either. It just presents the evidence people spend years claiming they value: growth, truth, connection, purpose. Final moments test those claims without mercy. If growth mattered, you moved toward challenge instead of comfort. If truth mattered, you didn't keep swallowing silence to stay liked. If connection mattered, you showed up consistently instead of occasionally. If purpose mattered, you acted before urgency forced your hand. Final moments don't judge. They display there's a particular panic that hits when people realize their priorities don't match their narrative. That panic isn't about death or loss, it's about recognition, seeing yourself clearly without time to adjust the lighting. That's why people fear final moments even when they're safe. They fear being seen by themselves without filters. Final moments also reveal what you trusted. Did you trust time to fix things for you? Did you trust avoidance to keep consequences away? Did you trust that tomorrow would always be available? Or did you trust your own ability to act, decide, and confront? That trust, or lack of it, becomes obvious when tomorrow disappears. What people call regret is usually misplaced priority. Not doing the thing they knew mattered, not because they couldn't, but because something else felt easier in the moment. Final moments bring those trade-offs into focus. You see the pattern, not the single mistake. The repeated choice to delay courage, to postpone honesty, to substitute comfort for meaning. There's no room for performance in those moments. You don't care how you sound, how you look, how it will be interpreted. You care about alignment, about whether your life actually reflected what you felt in your chest when nothing else was demanding your attention. That clarity is heavy because it's undeniable. Final moments reveal whether your life was reactive or deliberate, whether you were pulled by noise or guided by intention, whether you lived according to what mattered or what was convenient. And once that revelation happens, it doesn't scream or accuse. It just sits there, solid and silent, holding up a mirror that doesn't blink, showing you exactly where your priority lived when there was no time left to pretend. Ownership doesn't arrive gently, it replaces excuses by force. Excuses are fragile structures built to protect comfort, image, and ego. They sound reasonable when time is generous and consequences feel distant. Ownership shows up when those protections collapse. It doesn't argue with your explanations or negotiate with your intentions. It looks at outcomes and asks one question you can't dodge: what did you do with what you were given? Excuses are attractive because they feel intelligent. They dress avoidance in logic. They let you sound thoughtful while staying still. Ownership strips that costume off. It doesn't care how smart the excuse sounds or how convincing the story is. It reduces everything to action and result. That reduction feels brutal because it removes complexity. People hide behind to avoid accountability. People cling to excuses because excuses keep identity intact. If something failed, it wasn't you. It was timing, circumstances, other people, bad luck. Ownership threatens that identity. It says maybe the pattern is you. Maybe the common denominator isn't external. That realization hits like a punch because it removes the comfort of victimhood and replaces it with responsibility. Ownership isn't about blame, but people confuse the two because they're allergic to responsibility. Blame looks backward and looks for targets. Ownership looks forward and looks for leverage. When you own something, you gain control over it. When you excuse it, you surrender control and call it acceptance. Ownership replaces excuses because excuses are powerless, and ownership is dangerous. In the best way, excuses multiply when pressure is low. There's always another reason, another delay, another justification. Ownership compresses everything. It forces clarity. You either acted or you didn't. You either prepared or you hoped. You either spoke or you stayed silent. That clarity is terrifying because it leaves no room for reinterpretation. People often say they're being realistic when they're actually being avoidant. They say things like, this is just how it is, this is how I am, this is how the world works. Those statements sound mature, but they're often excuses wearing grown-up clothes. Ownership challenges that by asking whether you tested that belief or hid behind it, whether you tried to change the pattern or accepted it because change felt expensive. Ownership replaces excuses when pain becomes honest, when consequences can no longer be explained away, when repetition becomes obvious. At some point, the same outcome keeps showing up, no matter how many different stories you tell. That's the moment ownership steps in and shuts the stories down. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't comfort you either. It hands you the pattern and waits. There's a strange relief in ownership that people don't talk about. Excuses are exhausting. You have to maintain them, defend them, adjust them when reality pokes holes in them. Ownership is heavy, but it's clean. Once you accept that something is yours, the mental noise drops. You stop rehearsing explanations and start looking for solutions. That shift feels like breathing after being underwater too long. Ownership also changes how you see time. Excuses push responsibility into the future. Ownership pulls it into the present. Instead of saying someday, you say now. Instead of waiting for permission, you act with what's available. That immediacy is uncomfortable because it removes the buffer between desire and effort. You no longer get to want things without working for them. People fear ownership because it exposes potential. If something is yours, then improvement is possible. That means stagnation becomes a choice instead of a fate. Excuses protect you from that realization. They let you believe nothing could have been done. Ownership says something could have been done, maybe not perfectly, but deliberately. That awareness burns because it highlights missed chances and unused strength. Ownership doesn't mean you control everything. It means you control your response, your preparation, your consistency, your boundaries, your honesty. Excuses pretend you control nothing. They shrink your influence and call it humility. Ownership expands your influence and demands courage to match it. When ownership replaces excuses, language changes. You stop saying, they made me, and start saying, I allowed it. You stop saying, I didn't have time, and start saying, I didn't prioritize it. You stop saying, I was unlucky, and start saying, I was unprepared. Those shifts feel harsh because they remove comfort, but they also return agency. People who live on excuses are reactive. People who live in ownership are deliberate. That difference shows under pressure. When something goes wrong, excuse-driven people scramble for explanations. Ownership-driven people look for adjustments. One is focused on image, the other on outcome. Ownership also ends the need for sympathy. Excuses crave validation. They want someone to agree that you were right to stay the same. Ownership doesn't need agreement. It needs movement. It's quieter, heavier, more focused. It doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need witnesses. The moment ownership takes over, excuses lose their voice. They don't disappear because they're disproven. They disappear because they're irrelevant. Once you accept responsibility, explanations stop mattering. What matters is what you're going to do next, with clear eyes and steady hands, without the safety net of stories, without the comfort of blame, without the illusion that someone else is coming to fix what you've already realized belongs to you.